Mr. Mayor and people on the board, thank you for taking the time to let me speak about the 2020 census. I'm kind of ambivalent about having followed JRE because with the problems that they have, I'm kind of coming with halfway solution, but it's not the sort of thing that's going to happen right away. I do want to talk to you about the 2020 census and why it counts, literally why it counts, and also why we should care. And the simple answer to one of those, why it counts, is because the census creates data that is used by government agencies to provide a significant amount of money to the states and to the communities in which we live. The reason that we do the census is primarily because it's in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2 requires that everybody in the United States, or in the beginning it was in the country, would be counted. And the first census was done in 1790, and it's been done every 10 years since then. So we've got quite a bit of history under our belts here. Every 10 years, the results of the decennial census, and that's what this is called, the decennial census, are used to reapportion the House of Representatives to determine how many seats are allocated to each state. The counts everyone that lives in the county to ensure that the Congress, that is the House of Representatives, actually represents people as opposed to people who have a lot of money. So it's a head count, not a money count. The percent of no counts is significant, and that's something that I'll talk about in just a bit. But getting down to the money involved in it, there's estimated to be $675 billion allocated by the federal government to a variety of states, and the states that allocate those monies to a variety of organizations. According to a study by George Washington University, $17 billion of that $675 billion will go to Virginia. And how it's apportioned from Virginia, or how it's allocated for Virginia, depends upon the census. Money doesn't come from the census. In other words, they don't have a checkbook that the Census Bureau is writing a check for anybody. However, the count, the literal count of everybody in the community, is what determines how much money is allocated to that community. The money is spent on schools, hospitals, roads, public works, infrastructure in a general sense, and other vital programs. The census data is used by local governments like you for planning budgets, for emergency planning and preparedness, for public transport and community health care needs. And I'll stop here just a minute to tell you about Sheriff Kevin Hall. When I made this presentation earlier to a CAPP meeting, mentioned that he had lost a full-time employee based upon lack of funding, much of that coming from state or federal agencies. You can't ever say it's census money. It's not census money, but it's census count that determines the money that's used and how it's used. Census data is used by local governments for planning budgets, for emergency planning and preparedness, for public transport, community health care needs, and for businesses when they decide where to open a business, or where to improve, or where to expand. By real estate developers for decisions on home building, neighborhood revitalization, that sort of thing. I gave you a full page thing that looks kind of like this. And on page 3, you'll see 48 different reasons, and it's probably not all of them, but 48 different reasons and ways that the census money is used. And I'll just highlight a couple of them. There's 48, so I won't withdraw them. But number 1, and this is not a priority order here, decision making at all levels of government, understanding labor supply, assessing the potential for spread of communicable diseases. It just has so many different things that the census is providing, rather that the government is providing money for based upon the census count of a community. The big question is always going to be, as we're providing information about ourselves, is privacy protection. And for the first time, the census will be able to be completed online, or by phone, or by mail-in. And of course, that raises all sorts of questions about privacy protection, especially when you're talking about online. Responses can only be used, and this is a law, responses by the census can only be used to produce statistics. In other words, they can't share data that could identify a person or a place. They can only provide statistics. So X number of people are living in this particular neighborhood, but not the number, or rather the names of the people involved. Once your reply is received, and there's a couple of ways they're doing it that are different this year. You'll actually receive an invitation, a postcard invitation, to go online and fill out your census form. Do that, and you're done. You can also do it by phone. Once you're done, you're done. You can also do it by mail back. You'll get a form, a census form, you can mail that form back and you're done. Some people don't do that. They either forget or they just don't want to do it. And those people are the ones that we will then send out, people called census takers or enumerators. We'll send them out to their house, knock on their door, and try to help them fill out the form that way. So a lot of different ways you can do it, but the big problem is those that don't reply. If they don't reply, they don't get counted, and there's money involved in that. My job, specifically, is as a recruiter, and my job is to recruit people to work on taking the census information, to become enumerators, census takers, the guys and gals that go up to your door, knock on your door, and help you fill out the form, only for those people who don't reply in the 3 ways that I already mentioned. The counties that I handle are Allegheny, Botetourt, and Bath counties. The jobs are part-time and temporary in nature, primarily looking at January through maybe about May to June at the longest. And the nice part about it is you can set your own hours. The jobs pay more than the normal income. In Allegheny County, you're getting $13.50 an hour. And that does not include transportation. If you have to drive a car someplace, you get transportation benefits, and you also get training. And the training is covered in that hourly wage. If you're in Botetourt County, well, let me just jump up to Bath first. Bath County's gone up to $14.50 an hour. I can't explain why the difference is, but maybe it's that homestead folk that they make a lot more money anyway. And the other county is Botetourt. And Botetourt, because of the high-end housing and that sort of stuff going on in Northern County, they go up to $16.50 an hour. So that's more than average anywhere you go. And again, for me, the beauty of it is the flexibility of it. Weekends, evenings, if you work a day job. If you work a night shift, you work during the day. The idea is just to go ahead and help people complete the census. So my purpose here tonight is to get your help in getting the word out, both about the 2020 census, why it's important, and also to talk about the jobs that are available. Census jobs will create a boost in a few personal incomes, but a complete census count, that is counting everybody within a community, or the county as we're talking here, in these counties, can mean a significant increase in the federal funds allocated to our area. So here's where it gets really interesting. Estimates are that for every person not counted, and we had an 18% no count rate in Allegheny County 10 years ago. So 18%. For every person not counted, we're losing $2,000 of funding every year. So for the period of the census, the decennial census, 10 years, everybody who doesn't fill out the census is costing us $20,000 in federal funding. I've got in your form what I call the rich uncle analogy, just to understand how the census work. If you were a rich uncle and you had family living throughout the county and you were also very generous, but you wanted to be very even about it, you might say that I will give each of my relatives, in this case we'll just use the same number, $2,000. And for every one of your relatives that responds back and you say, hey, how are the family, how's the kids, and how many kids do you have? And they tell you, they get $2,000 a head. But if you've got somebody who says, well, I've got 5 kids, but he really has 7 kids living at the house, he's not getting $2,000 for those 2 kids. So the point is, if you're counted, there's money that's going to be coming in, more money than would be coming in otherwise. Specifically, I'd like to talk about the town of Clifton Forge, or ask that the town of Clifton Forge commits to distributing census literature that I will provide you at no cost. Now, I've already talked to Darlene, they're doing this. I've got information downstairs, but there's going to be some other things I'd like to do, like maybe inserting information in a mailer, but I'll talk to them about that. Also, would like you to commit to distributing online information that I can provide and share on your website or other social media. Again, for 2 reasons. One, to let people know about the importance of the census, but the other is to hire enough people to make sure that we get a complete census count. In addition, I will also make myself available to provide presentations like this to groups and clubs in the area. And there's one more thing. A low-cost and high-visibility option for temporary advertising is the sign that looks a lot like this. I love to put these around town. I got 75 of these to put in each county, Allegheny, Bath, and Botetourt. I couldn't even fit them in my Mini Cooper. They're low cost, they're effective, they stick in the ground, they're easy to put in, they're easy to take up. Unfortunately, the town code on signage is very restrictive about using this type of sign. For example, the 2020 census sign that I just showed you would not be legal according to code. However, I found that there is an exception for using this type of sign during elections. Well, I understand the gravity of the election process and the need to make the public aware of the election and of those running for the election, for the elected office. I found it ironic that while we can use this type of sign to elect those who spend the money, we're restricted from using this type of sign. Maybe I don't have to finish this. Restricted to using this type of sign to actually get some money. So to that end, I would ask the council to approve two measures. One, very short term, an immediate and temporary exception to the ordinance that would allow me to place a small number of signs, maybe 10, at some of the high traffic areas within the town of Clifton Forge during the months of January and February, as we're actually leading right into the census count. And number two, that on the longer term, the town council consider revising the sign ordinance to allow signs promoting each of the decennial censuses to be used during the months leading up to the subsequent decennial census operations, the next one being in 2030, and then 2040 and 2050. You guys won't be here to worry about it then. Let somebody else do that. But to get me going that far, that would be good. That is actually 2 months out of every 10 years, or $20,000 per person, not counted in today's dollars. That's 1.6% of the time allocated. 2 months is all I ask out of the next 10 years. It's a small step that has no cost. All the signage, all the literature comes from the federal government in promoting the census. And the benefit is, of course, we've got more heads to be counted and hopefully more dollars coming in rather than being lost or not being allocated because we didn't count everybody. I'll take questions.
Do you have the percentage of what was counted in Clifton the last time?
We do have that, Jeff, and it's not on there, but it's 18%.
Yeah, it was real.
Not counted.
I talked to these guys back in April, May.
Darren's right here.
Yeah, and it was real low.
Yeah.
Surprised.
And there's no reason to think that Bath County, for example, would be a whole lot better, or Botetourt. Maybe Botetourt's a little bit more because they were closer to Roanoke, but it's dismal, is what it is. And we need, besides people who actually count themselves, we need people that can go door to door and get the census from the people that don't count.
Now, will you be doing that hiring, Chuck, for the door to door?
I won't be doing it, Pam, but that's the people that I'm trying to get interested. I don't hire them specifically. I provide them the information. They go online to do the registration. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I go online and do this, is there a way that they can mark off the fact that I've done it so I will not be bothered with it again?
Effectively, yes, because that's the whole point of being able to do it online, being able to do it by paper, returning the ballot, or doing it by phone.
So as the process goes on, there'll become a list of people that have shrunken down to the people that haven't done it so they can just work with them?
Exactly. There's a timetable that we've got that when this period ends, another postcard goes out to remind you to do it. And if you don't reply within a given period of time, then the dreaded census taker comes to the door.
How do you get that list of people who have not responded?
How do we get the list? It's interesting, Ron, because there's already been part of the census done, and that part is to go and find out which residences or buildings are actually occupied. So we know where people live. We don't know anything about them. And that's what the census will tell us. And so if somebody from 1720 Bath Street doesn't reply, we don't know who they are, but we know they haven't replied.
So what you would like from us is to create a waiver of sorts so that we can temporarily get these signs out.
That would be it. The immediate waiver that would allow me to put some signs up in the Clifton Forge area, and I'm thinking maybe 10 signs just in the high traffic area. And then to consider changing the code to allow a little bit more flexibility for the decennial census, the next one being 2030.
So if we were going to do this, when do you need it done by?
The first one, if you let me know tomorrow, I'll have signs out.
Should we put it on our next agenda? Or another way to
What do
do
we
it?
think?
Well, Dave, do you want to make any comment in terms of what the ordinance currently allows? There are actually two provisions that impact this proposal. One has to do with signage on a piece of property that's private. And the code currently says that any signage on the property, with the exception of the election signs that you just mentioned, have to pertain to that property. So you can't have what's called an off-premises sign. In other words, Chuck at his previous location on Ridgeway could not advertise for something that was at a different street in the town. So that's one provision. The other, which was passed by council several years ago, allowed the public right-of-way under a very limited period of time to be used for directional and promotional signage for a specific event on the day of the event. And that had to be approved in advance, those locations. So Mr. Almarez would have to indicate his preference about location, whether that would be in the public right-of-way or on private property, because he and I have talked about this and he's aware of the current restrictions. And I had made the town attorney aware that this was coming, so I don't know if you have some comments about what could be done or what portion of the code need to be looked at to address Mr. Almarez's concerns.
I probably wouldn't consider putting it on private property, but mostly on, well, for example, two of them right out here in front of Town Hall. That would be one, or that would be two. Maybe where trying to think of who's got that, the beautification committee has a sign as you come across A Street Bridge that's up there. So that would be one place. Maybe by the entrances to where we have the welcome to town of Clifton Forge. Maybe where those signs are. But like I said, it's a small number of signs. I don't anticipate wanting to put it on private property. I just want high traffic areas.
Well, if the council is interested in doing something, I would suggest it would be something similar to what we already have for the one-time events, and it would be very specific, and I would suggest a one-time only situation, nothing that would be permanent, that would go into effect in 10 years from now. That council would deal with that issue, but I would suggest it would have to be something, it would be in the form of some type of resolution that would give control of where the signs went, if on our right-of-way or public right-of-way, to the town manager, just like the existing policy does now for the one-time events. In other words, if council's interested in doing that, it would still have to be approved by the town manager's office as to where the signs went, and you could even give the town manager the discretion of how many signs. But if you're interested in that, I think it would be a one-time type of procedure that we'd have to draw up and you'd have to vote on at the next meeting.
I think we should do that. I worked the 2010 census, and there's enough obstacles to getting the money that belongs to us anyway, that we don't need to create or to leave any source out that would provide that assistance.
And the next, if it goes on the agenda date, is what, next month?
That would be January the 14th.
Okay.
Would we have to add to that the duration of how long the signs could be up? You want them up for 2 months?
That would be council's, if council would choose to do that, that would be council's. We would have to get some information to draw this, to draft something. So we would need your input on that, and probably, maybe you could do it at your work session. I don't know if there's time to do it then, but if you're going to try to pass something at the meeting, there's going to have to be work done between now and then to get what council's idea of it is. He's given his opinion, but you need to give your opinion.
So Chuck, the 14th is all right, good time frame?
If I could get it done by January 1st, that would be wonderful. But if you have to consider something over a period of time, then kind of restrict it to that.
Well, I think we're having a work session on the
17th.
17th. So we might do it at the work session. If we have time.
Do you already have something scheduled for that if there's enough time? I mean, you could do it at another work session. It's council's, it's up to you guys. But we need to,
It shouldn't take long.
I was wondering myself what would take so long, but okay.
I could provide each of the council members by email tomorrow a copy of the current policy and the limitations that require location to be identified on a drawing or map, and that current policy says it can only be for the event itself, which generally is a day or 2 days at most. And I believe you all have seen those for some of the special events we've had in town, and that policy's been in effect for maybe 2 years or 3 years at most. So we could get that out to you right away so that you could be looking at it and thinking about what you might want the policy to be, but then we have to actually put it on the agenda in order to adopt resolution that day, since most work sessions.
it has to be voted on sometime.
So do we have to identify that as an agenda item so it can be voted on that day, the 17th? Okay. So we'd actually hopefully get some comments back from council members before the 17th so that Dave could draw up something that you all would be satisfied with.
I would do. We'll put it on there for the 17th.
Okay.
Work from there.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.